What's up, Tim?
All right, sir.
Are we
How
good?
you doing, buddy?
Minutes.
You guys are like
This
three
is
on
my
this committee, right?
John, he's out.
Yeah, you're
John.
Let me get out of here.
That's right. All right, good evening. This is the Services Committee for the City of Sunbury, July 6th, 2022. Can I get a roll call, please?
Damon Capel,
Here?
Marie Neff.
Here.
And John.
Here.
John Grumney's out. 4 present. 3 present, sorry.
All right, if everybody has had a chance to check the minutes from the June 1st meeting, I want to make a motion to approve the minutes.
You're the other one.
Roll call?
Damon Capel,
Yes.
Joe St. John,
Abstain?
Marie Neff.
Yes.
2 yeas, 1 abstention.
All right, judging from the huge crowd we have, there are no visitors tonight. So we'll move on to unfinished business and the Letts Avenue repairs update. Wes, is that you?
I'm sure I can report on that. Dale had contacted Fee Corp to do some additional televised inspection. We were interested from where we stopped, which is at the top of Letts by the bend by Mr. Bream's house as it moves down the hill towards Columbus Street. We got that televised, and then a section up Columbus Street as well. And I believe he was able to take some of the roots out too. We were asking the contractor if there was a way that they could cut one of the taps out that went into the pipe, and he did not have the equipment for that. So we were trying to take a few next steps there. I actually need to speak with Dale about that and just review the tapes and talk with him to determine next steps. We were moving a few things forward there to get the roots cut out and wanted to understand that downstream restriction before we really did much on Letts Avenue. You know, even though the pipe's cracked on Letts, it's probably been that way for quite some time. So it's not, you know, it's fairly stable. It's not gonna, hopefully it's not gonna collapse. So we'll continue to work on that, keep you updated.
So maybe the one other thing that, Wes, is that at some point we want to identify the contractor to move forward with the repairs. Are we ready to make a recommendation at any point on that? Because we did also tee that up for the council meeting if we were ready. I know we've talked about the 2
Okay.
bids that we have, but maybe we're not.
Yeah, we
ready.
haven't really talked that through, but we do have
Yeah.
two bids in hand.
Okay.
They're in the, I won't mention the cost, but yeah, it's expensive to do a small point repair. So we're trying to determine next step there.
Okay. All right.
All right, and then the street sweeping project, implementation plans.
Yeah, so I'll just give a quick little update on this. Steve, Brad, the service department director, myself had a chance to talk a little bit about the planning around the street sweeping. We've identified the contractor. We did that at the last meeting. Council approved the contract. We've been in communication with the cleaning company. They are suggesting that they could be here the week of August 29th to do the sweeping, the first round. That would be after the street program has wrapped up for the year. So that I think aligns nicely with that. They anticipate that it may take 4 to 5 days to get through the entire community, a little longer than it'll take when they start doing maintenance, cleanings. But on this one, they anticipate that they will be circling back on a couple of streets a couple of times because they think that, you know, again, it's going to require more than a single pass. We did talk to them a little bit about how they might attack the city in terms of cleaning. They have priced it, or not priced it, they scoped it out using a 4-quadrant kind of approach, similar to what I think we do for leaf collection. So if you think of 3 and 37 as kind of the corner, or the intersection, imagine the 4 corners, and that's roughly the quadrants. So we're still talking through that a little bit with them in terms of planning how they'll attack it. And that becomes important in terms of communicating then to the public about the importance of, you know, keeping the vehicles off the street if they can. Not everybody's going to be able to do that. but getting it off the street so that they're not swooping around those vehicles. They're trying to get as close to the curb, as much of the curb as they possibly can. So that's where we stand at the moment. If you had thoughts or comments, we certainly welcome those. Anything else?
How do you communicate? Get off the street?
Yeah, so I asked if they had any recommendations. They said that some communities are doing with signage. Everybody's using social media today to at least announce it. We would certainly do some level of both of those. But it'll be difficult to reach everyone. Maybe the homeowners associations become a little bit of a resource to kind of help us. But yeah, I mean, if you've got other thoughts in terms of who we ought to be reaching out to, I think that's probably the core of our strategy at the moment.
What time of day do they start sweeping? Is there going to be any impact to the school traffic in the morning? Because I think, will school be in session by then?
It will. Yeah. I don't know. That's a great question. I'll make it more detail on the timing of when they'll be sweeping the streets.
And then street maintenance program is up next.
This is
Oh, okay. So we held our pre-construction meeting or pre-project meeting with the contractor for our 22 street program last week. Timing wise, I think they're going to start with the bricks very soon. And then, they're very clear. We made it very clear that they have a completion date, and there's a disincentive to going beyond that completion date. And it's just Kintner and South Columbus, a section in there. We talked about communications between our inspection arm and the contractor, and especially in Kintner and with business access. They're looking at doing half-width milling, half-width paving, so they will be able to maintain pretty good flow through there, at least some flow through there. There will be some times that they'll have to shut an apron in on a business, but I stress to them the need to let those businesses know what's going on and to have good communication with those businesses. That's 22.
The 18th is when like Bill said that they're gonna start.
Did they commit to a date?
That was a tentative start date was July 18th.
Okay. And they're starting with the brick?
Correct, and completion was August 12th, I believe, in the contract, so. It'll be just a few streets there, but. We were also gonna address any punch list items from last year, since it's the same contractor that or a warranty issue. There were a couple of those, so. Same time.
What issues were there from last year?
Just some pavement markings. I'd have to check with Bill on the other ones that he might recall.
Columbus Street and where Mr. Gokenauer lives, that intersection kind of failed, and so they'll be coming back in, remilling and fixing that. It just, I don't know, it was too thin. They didn't get down with the mill far enough, but it's spalled. So they've got some fixing like that they need to do. Not much, but.
And you had in here 2023 planning.
So, yeah, good.
I think that's
What was
just,
the planning?
well, what is that's the question is, as we gather the information that we need to prioritize or to get your input on what should we throw into our OPWC grant application, which is due probably September.
First Friday in October.
October.
Yeah.
So at least start thinking about if there are streets or areas of focus for that.
Probably want to start with the ones that we didn't get the grant money to cover for this year's street program, I'd imagine, right?
It's a good point, yes.
Granville.
We have a list going. And the local match discussion was 400,000. Has there been any other thoughts or changes as far as contribution? And you do have a loan option too, which gains additional points. So we always want to consider that loan at 0% interest. You can pay that off quickly if you want to, but it does pick up points in the application. So once we finalize the streets and I know roughly what that local match is, I mean, if the 400,000 is cash, we want to do a little bit of loan and then pay for design fees, keep the design fee out of the OPWC money. Again, that's additional points, and we'll package up a strategy for the funding. But that would be ballpark, and say that if you want to do a loan for 100,000, a 400,000 in cash, or you want to do 300,000 cash, 100,000 loan, we need to figure out what you have available and what you want to commit to. So
Interest free is always good. I figured we'd want to see what we need first and what we want second and go from there, right?
I would guess that needs list is gonna be whatever we want to spend. So, and I would, my recommendation would be just to take a strategy that our grant ask is gonna be in check with the other applications for this district in that 300,000 to 400,000 range, so it's not too high. And then come in with a loan request as well at 0% and package that up, so.
And you say the loan increases our points.
Yeah, because they have a certain
PWC.
amount, a certain percent of the statewide funds they need to give in the form of a loan, and it rolls back in. It's a revolving loan. So they, most people want grant, obviously, so they give additional points when you take a loan out. But it is a 0% interest loan, and it's, I have to look at the percent again. I think if you do 25% of your OPWC ask as a loan, then you maximize that point category. So if we do, 300,000 and 100,000, then you maximize that point category.
Okay.
So 3 years ago, we did a pavement condition report. At that point in time, based on, I forget what we said, $600,000 or something in 3 year ago dollars, it was going to take us 16 years to replace all the streets. And at that point, we were going to still deteriorate the average. In other words, it was anticipating that we would increase our level of spending over the period of the 16 years. So we would at least like baseline, hey, we're not getting worse. What has happened over the past 3 years is we failed to get the grant, the grant. And looking back, I think it's probably because we've been too aggressive with what we said we would match, local match, and what we've requested in terms of the grant. And we haven't requested any loans in the past 3 years that I'm aware of. But we have done loans before through OPWC, but I think we've also paid them off. Is that correct?
There's only one out there right now. All the other ones we've paid off. And there's the one that's out there now, I'm not exact, but it's like 207,000, something like that.
Out of the
107.
like 60, 70 different jurisdictions or however many, I mean, we were 3 jurisdictions away from getting the grant. I mean, the grant is typically worth, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, to sum this all up, 3 years ago, we were like 16 on a 16-year cycle with an increased level of spend. We're now like $1 million in the hole because we didn't get, the grant that we were anticipating each year. There's no doubt that our streets have deteriorated overall over the past few years compared to what they were. On the aggregate, if we did another pavement condition report, I would almost guarantee our scores have gone down overall. And some of it is like self-inflicted. I mean, Miller Drive, we did that kind of on the cheap, and I'm not blaming anybody. I was probably part of the team that approved that, but that road is disintegrating. Miller Drive, Granville, these are like heavily utilized streets, and we drive on them every day, and there's, you know, speed bumps that are popping up everywhere. I guess my point is, like, I think we've really got to start taking a proactive stance on road maintenance, road repair, increasing our level of spend. $400,000 to me still seems pretty light from a local match. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we've been paying out of pocket anyways. I mean, we've got to step up our local match to get some coupon for a couple $100,000, right?
It's 400 generally represents our gas tax and license fee revenues. So we're not putting any general fund money in
Right.
to that level. So.
Right.
I was gonna run a few numbers just to take a look at the big picture. So your center line miles are about 20 miles. It's a little under 20, which would be 40 lane miles. So if you just take your average pavement life, 15 years, you know, 1 divided by 15 is what, 0.067, so about 7%. So 7% of 20 center line miles is 1.4 miles. So you'd have to do 1.4 miles of road a year, but that's big picture. We have a lot of newer roadways. So what I like to do is just take a look at an overall budget, and typically you want to take 10 to 20% of your annual budget and put that into a preservation type products on the newer roads.
Right.
Because you're going to get extended life. It's pay $1 now or $5 later.
Yeah.
It's kind of the old. So if you take a percentage and put that towards your pavement preservation products, and then the balance of it towards the older roads, but that's a quick rule of thumb, that's 7% a year to kind of address, and then we can quickly estimate, you know, the mill and fill for a lane mile, and you come up with a budget, and it's usually more than you have, but it at least gets you in the frame of mind of what it takes there to accomplish that. So, and again, we have that road biotics information recently, so we can quickly kind of re-rank things and look at a total and just try to come up with some placeholder numbers. And it may go up to, hey, we got to spend $600,000 or $700,000 a year to keep up or get back out of the hole, like the mayor just said. So that's a little bit of big picture thought.
I think you bring up a good point, not only on the maintenance side of things, but we're adding a lot more roads now. I mean, Communities at Sunbury is like fully built out now. 3 years ago, that was half the neighborhood. They've already got streets in Rolling Hills, and they're going to have streets very soon in Price Ponds. I mean, that's not an insignificant amount of roadway in either one of those developments. And 15 years, the clock's ticking because the pavement's down right now.
So the
We're gonna need to
extension of
replace
that
that.
life by putting a preservation product on there, there's Reclamite, there's other products to keep that asphalt from oxidizing is gonna be very low cost, but it's gonna extend that pavement life. So that's something to consider, especially because there's a lot of roadway being built off the golf course road there. So you're gonna have quite a bit of pavement.
With those preventative measures, when is it too late to do that? Like if you have the brand new roads in the communities, at what point do you start looking at that preventative maintenance? And at what point have you crossed the line when you really?
Rule of thumb, probably within 5 years, you know, beyond 5, it's starting to, the top surface is starting to oxidize and get brittle.
And how often would you have to do that treatment? Or is it
There's
like
different products and different manufacturers say different things, so, I don't
There's
know.
like crack sealing, but there's also like rejuvenator.
There's
Yeah.
rejuvenators, there's crack seal. I mean, crack, once it actually cracks, you want
Yeah.
to seal that immediately, so you have a preservation type product, you have a crack sealing, you know, you want to dedicate 20-25% of your budget for those types of things, and then you do the balance for a resurfacing, a mill and fill, and so on. And then you're going to end up with some full reconstructions as well, which get very expensive. So you want to, yeah, I agree. It's time for a refresh and a little bit of a look there on what's a good budgetary number. Let's just swallow it and see what that number is, and then we can back off it and come up with funding strategies.
On that topic, I missed the last meeting. Did we get an update on crack sealing or striping? Were there any decisions being made there?
No. Crack sealing is going to be the fall, because that's when, you know, spring or fall. So, and Brad and I talked about the painting this week, and I told him that I really do need his listing of where he thinks that needs to happen so that we can get something out. We'll have, obviously, when the paver comes in, they'll have a sub. We may be able to piggyback on that, or it may be cheaper for us to go out and just secure it separately, but it's in process. It's just not done yet.
Okay. And we still anticipate going to bid for that this year?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. Thanks.
No, we'll crack seal in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
All right, on to the refuse collection service agreement. I know that we had elected to extend our agreement there. So what's next?
All right, so yes, at the last meeting, council, or the services committee and council agreed to ask for the extension. It was something that was built into our current contract with Local Waste Services. So I've included in the packet the letter that we sent to them, basically saying we wanted to extend. I think I included the email where they sent a response back to me that said, we'd like to talk to you first. So so they've talked to us, they've talked to me, and they basically said they will not sign the extension because they just can't provide it at 2% increase per year for the next 2 years, given the inflationary state that we're in. Having said that, one thing that Mr. Bream's going to take a look at is, how aggressive does the city want to be in terms of trying to enforce that original contract? But he had asked, or we had talked about trying to at least gather some intel in terms of what other communities were paying. So I have included in the packet a little bit of information about neighboring jurisdictions and what they're currently paying and who their waste hauling services, who's providing that service. So if you look at the table that's in the packet, I've got Johnstown, Powell, Genoa Township, Delaware, and Westerville pricing for each of those. We do at the moment, that is our current price at $16.50 per month basic charge. We do have the best rate. Genoa Township has a very close rate, and they actually have a different provider. So that's interesting. Although the Genoa agreement, as I note on the right-hand side, that is for 21 and 22. So they're about at the end of their contract. So, they'll be going back out to bid at that point. So now, so what the business development representative, also their CFO, same guy, what he told me is that after talking to the president of the company, they were prepared to continue the contract if we were interested in a 10% increase year over year. So $16.50 becomes, I think it's $18.15 per month charged. That said, Steve and I talked about this earlier today, and I think Mr. Bream would certainly want him to weigh in as well. I don't see anything necessarily in the contract that allows us to basically just accept an alternative price. We probably would need to rebid this in order to properly execute a new contract for waste hauling services. The final thing I'll say then before throwing it open, and that is that the company representative said that they would, again, not sign the contract. They would allow the current, in their minds, the current contract to burn off. It will burn off in March of next year. So I think April 1st is actually when the new contract would go into effect, whatever new contract we execute. So there's a little bit of a time issue that we need to keep in mind too.
Realizing this is an open meeting and, we're in discussions with a vendor about a contract. And I guess my point is, it's a little disappointing that Local Waste Services isn't going to uphold their end of the agreement. I'm glad you're working with Mr. Bream so we can, find hopefully an amenable path forward with Local Waste Services. I think they've done a nice job. Every time we have a rate increase, even if it's insignificant, and even if it's the cheapest rate in, our area, residents don't like that, including myself. So it's nice to have predictability. With that said, I'd really like to probably not go into too much detail into, what maybe our next step.
Oh, I agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah. And so we're not asking for an action step at all today, just giving you an update in terms of where things stand and what we know about pricing in the region. Yep.
Thank you very much, Daryl.
I want to make sure I'm reading this right. So are Delaware and Westerville Rumpke as well?
No, I think in both instances, the municipality provides the service. Yeah.
I mean, we've got a competitive rate, that's for sure. I mean, Genoa has 45,000 people or something. I mean, it's above 35,000 people. And we have 7,700. But an agreement's an agreement. That's what I say.
Understood. All right. So that's the latest. We'll keep working it.
Thank you.
All right. And then on to new business, wastewater treatment plan capacity expansion update.
Big topic.
Yeah. We haven't talked about it in a little while too.
Okay. So I just wanted to update the committee, Steve, Daryl, Dale, myself, and Dan Barr met to kind of go over the specifics of what the improvements that we're discussing, and went through it line by line. There was a memo in your packet there, I believe, to kind of run through. We put that together as basically a summary. I think everybody was here when Dan Barr and our group came in and did a presentation on the facilities plan and walk you through everything. So that had 3 phases in it: phase 0, 1, and 2. Phase 0 was the one that we're currently designing, but it was a lot of replacement, some sludge storage, pump replacement. Really wasn't increasing plant capacity. And just knowing the recent development pressure that we've all been seeing and hearing, and attending meetings with many developers, everybody agreed it was prudent to, start looking at moving forward with phase 1 and 2. So what this does is it kind of packages up phase 0, 1, and 2, which is our facilities plan. So that'll bring us from our current permit of 1.125 million gallons a day to 2 million gallons a day. So pretty significant increase in flow. So this basically just presents those improvements needed to get us to 2 million gallons a day. One key point is, and the reason why we prepared the table starting on page 2, was to illustrate the portions of the improvements that are going to be used for a capacity increase versus a replacement item. So for instance, at the influent pump station, bigger pumps are going to be installed, but again, those pumps were installed back in 2004, so they're reaching their 20-year life, and there is a lot of equipment replacement. The other kind of big picture point that I wanted to make is we are looking at what the improvements and what the site area will allow for as far as a maximum capacity. So just a little more history on that. When Floyd Brown did the original facility plan, it was up to 3 million gallons a day for that current site. And everything's kind of plumbed up for that. And it would require an additional oxidation ditch, which are those large tanks that are on the south side of the plant. One of the things that we've been looking at to get the plant up to 3 million gallons a day is just working with the current oxidation ditches, not having to build a new tank. But we're looking at an aeration system called fine bubble diffusers, which increases the oxygen transfer, and bigger rotors. There's big rotors inside those tanks that mix and move that water. So we're running some numbers right now to see what we're comfortable with, and we think we can get 3 million gallons a day out of that current tankage, I'll call it, at the plant without building new tanks. And we even think that with that additional, because there is additional room for another oxidation ditch and a fourth clarifier, which are the round tanks there on the site. So with that fourth clarifier and an additional oxidation ditch with the fine bubble system, we think we can start approaching 4 MGD at that site. The other component there, with discharge permit for wastewater plants, they have a anti-bag, it's called, so you can increase flow, but you got to maintain the same amount of solids that's being discharged to a river or stream. So that requires more filtration. So as soon as we start going above, and this is a EPA question, and they haven't really approved the current facilities plan, but there's additional filters required after the oxidation ditch and the final clarifier treatment. So that's the last piece as far as site availability, acreage at that current site to see what's possible. We'll have that answer soon. We want to kind of determine what's required there as far as filtration. But we thought, we have a facilities plan right now into EPA for 2 million gallons a day. So that document is in. We have the improvements defined. Our thought is to go ahead and move forward with this project, knowing that we have room for kind of a modular expansion there quickly to go above that. But to get to just the capacity, because you're running right now about 0.85, just under 1 million gallons a day. So you're looking at, 1.2 million gallons capacity, additional capacity if you go to 2. So that's quite a bit of growth. So that's our next steps. Just schedule wise, there is the DEFA process as far as loans. What we would recommend is initially to apply for a planning and design loan, which is 0% interest. So that'll get us moving on the design part. Design on this with the permit approval is going to probably take 12, even maybe 15 months by the time we finish design and get a final PTI approval, work through all that. So if we start design soon, work through then the construction loan process with the state through EPA, they have a nomination period every August. So we would be ready to nominate for a construction loan in August of 23 is our best case. And then assuming that we could finish design, get plan approval from EPA, and even have a bid number so that when you nominate for a construction loan, your next step is the loan application. So you have a final construction cost and the inspection fees and everything packaged in that August of 23. And then starting construction, getting contracts, you're looking at another 60 days. And then you're probably looking at a 15 to 18 month construction period.
Say what?
A 15 to 18 month construction period. So, that's just a, and with this project, it could be less, it could be 9 to 12 months. It's a lot of equipment replacement versus building tanks. So, but there's quite a supply chain issue with a lot of the equipment and motors and things. We're having other projects where ductile iron pipes take in 15 months to arrive at a site sometimes. So there's a lot of supply chain issues, so we want to buffer that time. But so we're looking, again, a conservative number would be that 15 to 18 months for construction. So that's kind of a snapshot of the schedule on a project like this. And that's typical. Most water plants, wastewater plants, large facilities like that just take a design period, approval period from the state, and then you package up all your loan. Next step is we're finalizing the costs right now to get us through phase 2 for both the construction and the engineering. We'll talk with Steve, Daryl, Kathy on all the numbers, and it's it'll be a big project, but I think it's much needed. You're approaching your current capacity. Just some ballpark numbers. Open here, give me a second. I did print it. Just looking at your current tap fees and assuming that we'll maintain a 3% increase on those taps and considering a 20-year term on a loan and looking at 2 million gallons a day minus your current capacity of 1.125 would leave you an additional 875,000 gallons a day for capacity. And then if you take an individual residential home at 300 gallons a day is the typical there, that would provide you with almost 3,000 future residential units. So that's just kind of a rough number. And if you took the average tap fee with a 3% increase over 20 years, currently we're just over 8,000, but using 12,000, that produces a revenue of almost 36 million for that period, for that capacity up to 2 million. And if we were to go to 3 million, you would produce a tap revenue of 77 million. So that's how these improvements are paid for with those capacity fees, assuming people are buying our tap fees. Right. That's part of the game there. And the state will challenge, you say, hey, I want to build a plant with 5 million gallons a day and take a loan out. They're going to ask you for a projection on growth and what's reasonable. So you don't want to go too far over. So really trying to think about the approach there on, getting to 2, but then really considering site area, next steps on a quick modular increase that we could pull the trigger on if needed. So to have things ready to go, thought through, but yet step it in a way that makes sense. So try not to get into details there too much within a few minutes, but that's a quick overview of the kind of the needs, the schedule, the costs. Didn't get into the cost numbers. That's next. But and any questions on there? Does that make sense?
That was very helpful. My question is, and this might be a really dumb question, but while the upgrades are being done on wastewater, will we temporarily lose capacity due to shutdowns?
No, they'll maintain treatment at all times. Yeah, they have to. So.
A similar question, based on our current growth rate and given that we're not anticipated to really get certified at the increased capacity until December 2024 or later, do we run into any, those thresholds with the EPA where 80%, 90%, there's some sort of oversight programs where if you get, within your certain capacity, they have to come in and look. My off base with that, if we get to like 90% capacity or something like that, we're under some program.
They officially can't restrict tap fees from being approved until you're at capacity. Is
Okay.
that what you're asking? But, but when you get close, they're gonna be paying attention and asking questions and asking for planning documents. But we have a facility plan for expanded improvements into them right now, which is still in their court for approval. And so that's, if you don't have a facilities plan and they do a annual inspection and, you don't have a plan to expand and they see the housing coming, they're gonna be concerned. And it happened before back in 2001, 2 range. They were under a moratorium here within the
Right,
village
that's what
where,
I was thinking about.
yeah, it was basically they wouldn't allow any new connections unless you removed infiltration inflow to create capacity at the plant. So there was a very controlled process, and there are some areas around Columbus that are in that condition right now, which you want to stay ahead of that. And
Main City?
Main City is one of them. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, sorry if they're one of CT's clients, I don't know that or not.
We are doing the plant expansion there, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did have a question. So I was taking notes as you were going through this quickly. What I heard was a couple things. One, we think we have the real estate today to potentially get up to 4 million gallons per day.
Need to look at the filter space, the space required for the tertiary filters.
We can get up to 3 fairly no problem without with a lot of it investment, the real estate can accommodate 3. We may be able to get to 4.
Right.
Okay. And then we're at about 800,000 today. We're going to go up to 2 million really by December 2024 is when we would, flip the switch, something like that.
Right.
It seems like a long time to me. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But it's a $1.2 million or 1.2 million gallon per day increase in capacity. I heard you say that equates to about 3,000 taps. Is that using 350 gallons per day?
300 gallons a day per home.
Okay.
And I used from 1.125 to 2, so the 875 divide by 300, you get the number of units.
I was taking the 1.2 million divided by 4,000.
I'll be glad to share some ballpark numbers in a spreadsheet if you want to play around with them or anything.
Okay.
So if you're a spreadsheet guy, we can take
I'm
care
a
of it.
spreadsheet guy, definitely. And then I know you said the next step is really where you're going to come up with costs, not only for like the engineering of the phase 1 and 2 plan, but also are we coming up with probable costs for the expansion? Like it's going to be $15 million or something along those lines? Are we going to have some probable costs in the next month or 2?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I have them drafted right now, so
Okay.
I'm just going through some quality control checks on them, but it will include all construction and engineering from design through construction for phase 0, 1, and 2 to bring us to 2 million gallons a day. So that'll be total.
And this may have been in the notes here, but did you review this with Dale?
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
we sat
you guys
down
did
with Dale.
meet. Okay.
Yeah, we did. We spent a couple hours. We walked through, we talked about things. Yes, and I just had a final point on that I'll mention once you're done with your questions.
Okay. Yeah, sorry for the 20 questions.
Oh, no.
You caught me up to speed. I feel like I missed a month in June in meetings and updates and things. So thanks for bringing me up to speed.
Sure.
Steve or Daryl, did you have anything else on the wastewater? Okay. Or anything?
Just one final thing I was going to mention, that we did want to take a look, in addition to what was in the facility plan. When you're doing a project of this size, we just wanted to make sure there weren't other things at the plant that need to be addressed, as far as any fencing, buildings, paint peeling off the wall kind of thing, a roof leak. You don't want to spend 15, 17 million and have minor things occur, paving, automatic gate at the entrance, those kind of small things, but they make it a little bit better down there. Dale's talked about a small building addition with some facilities there for the staff as far as a room and lockers and showers, that type of thing. So we're gonna look at that, try to put placeholder number on it to include in the initial cost. So that was my final comment there.
And the facilities plan update, is it also open to doing things like lift station improvements, or does?
Yes.
It is,
Yes.
okay.
And actually, on that, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I have to mention this before I forget, because we've talked about it a million times and I don't know that we've ever done anything about it. We need, what is it called? Like remote monitoring of
Yeah, SCADA. Yeah, we have the SCADA look in here. So we're going, and we talked about that with Dale to update all the SCADA at the plant, which you can monitor that remotely. And it gets from a basic system to very complex. So, there's options there, but you want to build in some basic SCADA features of monitoring, alarm systems built into SCADA where it's notifying personnel, you can track it. There's apps, you pull that up on an iPad and see what's going on. You can spend very low SCADA systems to very complex SCADA systems, but we had a discussion with Dale about that. So
I'm sorry to cut you off, Wes.
No, that's fine. All good. That's really all I had. I just wanted to give a quick overview of the meeting with Dale and what the process might look like.
Yeah, thank you. That was very helpful.
Sure.
Sticking with wastewater though, staffing update, I had asked to get brought up to speed on that.
So on the good side of the news, our last employee that we hired after a couple attempts did get a CDL. So we now are 3 deep on the CDL, which was very important to Dale. We have been continuing to kind of post the job, haven't really had much interest other than candidates that Dale felt were a little bit far away. Mount Gilead, things like that, where it's a half an hour to get here, and his concern of how they can respond when needed. So I'm going to talk with him further about how we get that fourth person on. And I think we have a potential candidate. He liked parts of this candidate, but the part he didn't like was he didn't have a CDL. So I'm hoping now that we have 3 CDLs, the really strengths of that candidate may kind of change his perspective a little bit on that person. And that's a conversation I'll have this week with him.
And if we hire a person without CDLs, the expectation is they would get them after hire.
Yeah, we've been the last person we hired in services. We're kind of staging, if we don't have an immediate need for a CDL, kind of at the end of their probationary period, they've got to get that going. It'd probably be the same with Dale. Just because now we're going to incur some fairly substantial costs to get a CDL with the training and things like that. So we want to make sure the person at least gets 6 months in and we're comfortable with attendance and other issues before investing that kind of money into a person. So.
And when it comes to response time, do we have a general guideline that we go by there where we want them to live within a certain radius?
I don't know that we have a firm rule on that.
Well, it depends on how fast you drive anyway. Right?
Yeah, and in 15 minutes, I think is very reasonable. A half an hour to me is not unreasonable. And so, but.
The person applied for the job, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're kind of understanding what that is for them.
Mm-hmm.
If we're setting job expectations about response time, responsiveness, on the clock, on call. Seems like there's ways around that. I feel like if this job market's crazy. I mean,
Yep.
CDL drivers are the hottest commodity there are out there
Absolutely.
right now. And we're one person away from decreasing our staffing by what, 33%?
33. Yep.
So
It's true.
we're exactly where we were last year. We've got to improve it. Yeah, and everybody knows it. We just got to get Dale on board with this. What about Brad's staffing? How's he doing?
Brad's full right now. I think he would like to add another person. And we've got one candidate that, let's see, how do I put this? I was using if you're not going to hire him, this guy might hire him. And that kind of shook it loose a little bit. The person is a dual threat in terms of he's had wastewater background, he's had streets and that background. So,
I know over the past 2 years, we lost 2 long-term employees, and then we may be, having some others retire soon. So we did replace those 2. Eddie's the most recent one.
yeah, we did replace him.
All right.
All right, in our last few minutes, our last agenda item is stormwater utility. I feel like we've talked about this every year since I've been on council, and
5 minutes
never
probably
done
isn't enough.
anything. Yeah.
See if I can,
Well, Murray, you haven't heard this, have you?
No, he probably hasn't.
I don't want to repeat something that Daryl asked me to give a big overview, just a high level of what a stormwater utility is. So basically, I'll try to do this in a couple minutes. So it's a way to charge for stormwater impacts for a community. It's kind of a piece of the infrastructure which can be unfunded in some ways, and typically it dips into a general fund a lot of times. So a way to assess for that is determining the impervious area for a residential unit, which a good rule of thumb that a lot of places use is 2,500 square feet per residential home. When you think about your rooftop, your driveway, your sidewalk, for a home, that's about an average impervious area. And I mentioned impervious area because that's where the runoff occurs. So your grass area, your field, your agricultural areas don't have as much runoff as the pavement and the rooftops. So that's the basis. So what you do is you basically do an assessment of your stormwater needs. You come up with a dollar amount. You come up with your equivalent residential units. So say within the village, we have 2,000 units. What's our sewer customer count? About 19.
2,000.
About 2,000 units. So then you have to take all your commercial, industrial, non-residential, and you take your impervious square footage of those areas and you divide by 2,500 to come up with your equivalent residential units. And just plugging in a couple numbers, using 2,000 on the residential unit side, take 10 million square feet of other non-residential. And just I took a quick look, like the Kroger site with the building and the parking lot, that's about 300,000 square feet. So that's the parking lot with the Kroger rooftop. So imagine we probably have about 10 million square feet. So that, when you divide that by 2,500, you get about 4,000 equivalent residential units. So 6,000 units would be a ballpark of what we're probably looking at. So then if you take your stormwater needs and say that produces that you come up with a stormwater master plan that you need 100,000 a year, you take that and basically divide that by 6,000 and you come up with almost $17 per year per residential unit, which is like $1.40 a month for a single family home. Now that's based on 100,000. So you go 200,000, you double that, you triple that at 300,000. So rule of thumb around the area, central Ohio, it's going to range between as low as $3 a month, maybe up to $15 a month. So kind of in that 5 to 15, being $10 a month is probably more of an average, and they keep going up, but 120 a year, so maybe if we put a placeholder on $100 a year or something. So you want to, when you set this rate, you probably want to consider, like you do tap fees or others, what's the rates in the area. That's a threshold that can be an expectation, because your master plan for stormwater improvements can encompass a lot of cost, but then there's the reality of what's collectible from the residents. So that's a snapshot by numbers there, if that helps. I think it helps frame it a little bit when you talk some hard numbers real quick. But that's what the stormwater utility will do. So steps through that is to basically do an assessment of the needs, and then you do an impervious study with a orthophoto or an aerial photo of the impervious areas to measure more on the commercial industrial side, because the residential units will be a flat rate. And come up with a number that everybody's comfortable with. You draft an ordinance and pass it, and away you go. So
Just that easy.
Yeah, so the reason to put it on the agenda, again, just, I think there have been concerns about flooding along Prairie Run, and, that's an ongoing issue that we haven't necessarily developed a capital budget around. And we probably don't have a direct resource to respond to it. So again, maybe a little bit more work on our part to address that. I think the reason to at least get this back in front of the committee. Apologize that it's happened more than once.
And I've asked for this to be added to the agenda because it has been an annual topic, but we haven't done anything with it, as anything serious with it. So I think storm drain maintenance, the pipes underground for your stormwater. We live in a relatively, especially the west side of 3 newer development that is impacting stormwater. And I think it's fair to say that probably Prairie Run, Little Walnut Creek, Big Walnut Creek are seeing increased water levels as the development has occurred. There's all different types of strategies that this money can be used for, like detention ponds, retention ponds, rain gardens, all these different ways to allow the water to be absorbed into the ground effectively, as opposed to running down into the creek and creating flood.
All right. It is 7:30. Does anybody have anything for good of the order? If not, I will move to adjourn. Second by Murray Neff. Can I get a roll call?
Damon Capel?
Yes.
Murray Neff?
Yes.
Joe St. John?
Yes.
3 yeas.
Thank you.
Yeah.